he is.
The most beloved father on American television was 13 years older than two of the sons he was supposed to have raised. Lorne Greene was 44 when Bonanza premiered in 1959. Pernell Roberts and Dan Blocker were both 31. The fiction that Greene had fathered these men, raised them, shaped them, earned their respect across decades of frontier life, required audiences to accept an age gap that barely covered a single generation. They accepted it completely, because the show never asked them to look at the math. It asked them to look at the family. Bonanza ran for 14 seasons and 431 episodes on NBC. At its peak, it was the #1 show on American television. It was the first Western broadcast in color. It made Michael Landon a star who would go on to define family television for another quarter century. And it was built on creative decisions so specific and so deliberate that most viewers watched for years without ever consciously registering how carefully they'd been constructed. 15 facts today, spanning the original series, the 3 revival films, and the legacy of a show that was almost canceled in its first season and ended up running for 14 years. One of these facts involves a cast member who spent 6 years trying to leave. Another involves a restaurant chain. And the one we close on explains why a show about a ranching family in the 1860s still has something to say in 2025. Let's count it down. 15. The show was conceived as King Arthur in Nevada.
Thanks, Ben.
Most television westerns were built on a simple template: lawman, frontier, good versus evil. Bonanza was built on something considerably older and considerably grander. Creator David Dortort conceived the Cartwright family as a direct transposition of the Arthurian legend into the American West. Ben Cartwright was King Arthur, the patriarch of a noble household, the keeper of a specific code of conduct, the man whose moral authority shaped the world immediately around him. His 3 sons, Adam, Hoss, and Little Joe, were his knights. Each one embodied a different quality: intelligence, physical strength, and passionate energy. The Ponderosa was Camelot. This was not a casual metaphor that Dortort mentioned once in an interview and forgot. It was the structural architecture of the show. Ben Cartwright's authority was not enforced through violence or institutional power. It was earned through character, maintained through consistent moral example, and extended through the specific loyalty of people who had been shaped by it. That's the Arthurian template applied to a 1,000-square-mile Nevada ranch in the 1860s. The show aired in an era when American television was saturated with sitcoms that depicted fathers as bumbling, well-meaning idiots managed by their more competent wives, father knows best notwithstanding. Dortort wanted something different. He insisted the show be an hour long rather than the standard half-hour, specifically to have enough time to portray Ben Cartwright as a father figure of genuine depth and authority. The resulting episodes, with their emphasis on moral complexity, dialogue, and family loyalty over gunfights, drew a specific kind of audience response. Lorne Greene received thousands of fan letters from teenage boys who wished that Ben Cartwright was their father. That response wasn't accidental. It was exactly what Dortort had been reaching for since the first day he sat down to build his frontier Camelot. 14. NBC nearly canceled it in the first season. When Bonanza premiered on Saturday night, September 12, 1959, it was directly competing with Perry Mason on CBS, one of the most dominant shows on American television at the time. The ratings were grim. The show failed to make the top 15 in its debut season, and NBC had serious conversations about pulling it. The show survived that first season, just barely. Then it survived a second. And then, in 1961, NBC moved it to Sunday night, a quieter slot with less brutal competition. What happened next requires a contextual note about something NBC and RCA had a direct commercial interest in. Bonanza was the first Western, the first one-hour drama series broadcast in color. RCA, NBC's parent company, manufactured color television sets. A visually spectacular color, Western airing in prime time was, functionally, a weekly advertisement for the product they were trying to sell. The arrangement? between the network and its parent company gave Bonanza corporate protection that a show with its first season ratings would not normally have received. The move to Sunday night and the expansion of color television ownership happened simultaneously. Audiences who had purchased RCA color sets tuned in to see what their new televisions could do with the Nevada landscape. The Ponderosa's vistas, Lake Tahoe, the Sierra Nevada, the specific visual richness of a landscape that had never been broadcast in color before, were the demonstration model for a technology that was reshaping American living rooms. The show that almost didn't survive its first season reached #1 in the ratings within 2 years. The combination of a better time slot, a growing color television audience, and a Cartwright family that was becoming genuinely beloved produced one of the most dramatic turnaround stories in television history. 13. The cast member who hated being there.
A long time ago, a man fooled around with a thing he called a cut.
Pernell Roberts played Adam Cartwright, the eldest son, the one who had built the Ponderosa's ranch house with his own architectural knowledge, the most formally educated and intellectually disciplined of Ben's 3 sons. He was a gifted actor, and by most accounts, he was miserable for most of the 6 years he spent on the show. Roberts's complaints were multiple, specific, and genuinely principled. He considered the scripts too lowbrow. He objected to the show's treatment of minority characters. African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, and Native American people were all, in his view, written with a casual dismissiveness that reflected the worst of the era's television conventions. He pushed producers to have Adam Cartwright marry a Native American woman played by a black actress, a suggestion that was declined. He found the glorification of wealth during an era of genuine poverty distasteful, and said so. His politics were, by the standards of early 1960s network television, considerably more progressive than the show he was on. He tried to get out of his contract from essentially the beginning. For 6 years, he asked NBC to release him. For 6 years, they declined. The show was too successful, his character too central, the risk of disruption too significant. In 1965, NBC finally allowed him to leave after the 6th season. He walked away from a show that was, at that point, the #1 program on American television, returning to stage work and the kind of material he had always believed was beneath him on the Ponderosa. He later found a different kind of television fame as the lead of Trapper John, MD, which ran from 1979 to 1986. But the specific combination of Roberts' talent, his genuine principles, and his sustained unhappiness in a role that defined him publicly for 6 years, while frustrating him privately for the same period. That is one of American television's more complex character studies. He was right about most of the things he objected to. He was also, by staying for 6 years, part of what made the show work. 12. Michael Landon was 4 inches shorter than he appeared.
Right, you said he's Willie's brother. You said he came into town 3 days after the accident.
Little Joe Cartwright was the youngest and most physically impetuous of Ben's 3 sons, the one who rode hardest, loved most recklessly, and got into more trouble more quickly than his brothers. He was played by Michael Landon, who became one of the most recognizable faces in American television and went on to create and star in Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven after Bonanza ended. In the Cartwright family, surrounded by Lorne Greene and especially by Dan Blocker, who stood 6 feet 4 inches and weighed well over 300 pounds, Landon presented a problem of scale. The show's visual grammar suggested a physical family. The reality was a considerable height disparity. The solution was 4-inch lifts, worn inside Landon's boots throughout the production. This gave him enough height to read convincingly within the frame alongside his co-stars and to project the physical confidence the character required. It was not a unique solution in Hollywood. Heel lifts and platform boots had been addressing height disparities in film and television for decades. But the specific visual engineering of making Little Joe Cartwright credible in a family that included Hoss Cartwright required the kind of careful, consistent physical management that most viewers never consciously registered. Landon was, by multiple accounts, difficult on set in the show's later seasons. Producer David Dortort described him as increasingly resistant to direction, someone who would stop scenes for extended story conferences about decisions he disagreed with. These tensions existed alongside a genuine talent and a specific kind of screen charisma that the audience responded to with remarkable consistency. He outlasted the show by 2 decades. The 4-inch lifts were worth the trouble. 11. Lorne Greene's hairpiece had its own story. Lorne Greene wore a hairpiece throughout the entire run of Bonanza. This was known to the cast and crew, but was, by Greene's evident preference, not a subject for public discussion. He did not want to be seen without it. He went to considerable lengths to ensure the illusion was maintained. One story from the set has become something of a production legend. During the filming of an episode that required Greene to jump into a water tank, a large tank at Paramount Studios used for water-based filming, his hairpiece came off upon impact. Greene went completely under the water. The hairpiece floated to the surface. Michael Landon and Dan Blocker watched what happened next. After a moment, Greene's hand shot up out of the water, located the hairpiece by touch, and pulled it back down beneath the surface. Greene then emerged from the tank wearing the hairpiece, slightly askew, but present. He walked past the crew and into his trailer without acknowledging what had happened. This moment, as both Landon and Blocker recounted it afterward, was delivered with Greene's characteristic composure. A man who had decided that the hairpiece was going to stay on his head regardless of what circumstances intervened, and who had, by sheer force of will and underwater acrobatics, made that determination stick. The show's patriarch had just demonstrated exactly the quality that made Ben Cartwright credible: the complete refusal to acknowledge that anything had gone wrong. If this kind of real story, the people behind the characters, the choices that built American television, is what you're after, subscribe. We cover this every week. 10. Dan Blocker founded the restaurant chain you ate at as a kid.
It takes something doing to make a man unhappy when he's with you.
Hoss Cartwright, the gentle, enormous, warm-hearted middle son who became one of the most beloved characters in the show's history, was played by Dan Blocker, a Texan who stood 6 feet 4 inches and carried a physical presence that made every frame he was in feel populated differently than it had been without him. In the early 1960s, at the height of Bonanza's popularity, Blocker made a business decision that connected his character's name to American dining culture in a way that outlasted both him and the show. He invested in and helped establish a steakhouse chain originally called Bonanza. The restaurants traded directly on the show's brand identity, the name, the frontier imagery, the specific cultural warmth associated with the Cartwright family. When Blocker sold his stake in the chain, the name changed to Ponderosa. Another piece of the show's mythology, now applied to family steakhouse dining across the United States. Ponderosa Steakhouse became and remains one of the recognizable casual dining brands in American restaurant history. Millions of Americans have eaten at a Ponderosa without ever connecting the name to the Nevada ranch where Ben Cartwright raised his 3 sons, or to the enormous, gentle actor who helped give the chain its initial identity. Dan Blocker died of a pulmonary embolism following surgery on May 13, 1972, at 43 years old. His death stunned the production and the audience equally. Lorne Greene, speaking afterwards, said he didn't see how the show could continue. "I said to my wife, 'That's it. It's finished.' He was right." Bonanza ran one more season after Blocker's death. It ended in January 1973. 9. The show was watched by 500 million people worldwide.
Turn him loose. Let him go back to the Ponderosa. My father will send the money and I'll remain.
At the height of Bonanza's international distribution in the 1960s, the show was broadcast in 97 countries. 97. In an era when global television distribution was considerably more logistically complex than today, the Cartwright family became recognizable faces across North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and South America simultaneously. The show was dubbed, subtitled, and in many cases simply ran with original English audio to audiences who heard an American Western for the first time. 3. Specific values it depicted: family loyalty, land as identity, the relationship between authority and moral responsibility were, it turned out, not specific to Nevada in the 1860s. They translated. During its peak years of international distribution in the mid-1960s, Bonanza reportedly reached an aggregate audience of approximately 400 to 500 million viewers worldwide, a number that reflected both its domestic dominance and the reach of American television at that specific historical moment when the medium was expanding rapidly across newly developing broadcast markets. The show that had barely survived its first season went on to reach an audience the size of which had almost no television precedent. Its international reach was one of the defining examples of American cultural export in the Cold War era, a family of Nevada ranchers becoming a reference point for audiences in countries that had nothing resembling the American West and everything resembling the universal experience of family. 8. Pernell Roberts wanted to cast a black actress as Adam's wife. This is the fact that illuminates most clearly why Pernell Roberts was so genuinely unhappy on Bonanza, and why his unhappiness was rooted in something more substantial than personal temperament. Roberts pushed consistently for the show to engage honestly with the racial realities of the American West in the 1860s. He objected to what he saw as the casual stereotyping of minority characters throughout the series, including the show's treatment of Hop Sing, the Cartwright family's Chinese cook played by Victor Sen Young, whom Roberts felt was written as a racial caricature rather than a person. His most specific and documented push was for a storyline in which Adam Cartwright would marry a Native American woman, and Roberts wanted that woman to be played by a black actress. The argument was historically grounded. Intermarriage between Native Americans and Black Americans was not unusual in the 19th century West. The representation would have been accurate. The producers declined. The network was not prepared to put an interracial marriage at the center of a primetime family western in the early 1960s. The commercial risk was real. The advertiser relationships the show depended on were not things the network was willing to test with that storyline. Roberts knew this. He pushed anyway, because he believed the show had a responsibility to the history it was claiming to depict and to the audiences it was reaching. Being right about the history and the principle, and being overruled by the commercial reality, and staying on the show for 6 years anyway, that is the specific texture of Pernell Roberts' Bonanza experience in a nutshell. He was not simply a difficult actor who didn't want to be there. He was a principled person who had looked at the show's limitations clearly, and was frustrated by the gap between what it was and what he believed it could be. 7. The Ponderosa Ranch became a real place you could visit. In 1965, Bill and Joyce Anderson owned a horse ranch near Lake Tahoe in Nevada, near the area where the fictional Ponderosa was indicated on the map that appeared in the show's opening credits. The ranch was located at the edge of the actual landscape that the show's credits depicted, and Bonanza fans began showing up. Not invitations, not promotional events, just fans who had looked at the map in the credits and understood roughly where the fictional Ponderosa was supposed to be, and had decided to go there. The Andersons recognized what they had. They contacted NBC and Bonanza co-creator David Dortort and proposed turning their ranch into an official theme park attraction. NBC and Dortort agreed. In 1967 and 1968, the Ponderosa Ranch theme park was developed and opened to the public. The park featured a full-scale replica of the Cartwright Ranch house, built to match the production sets used in filming, along with staged robberies, period entertainment, and food including Haas burgers. The cast made appearances. Fans could stand in front of the ranch house and feel for a moment as though the Cartwrights were real people who might come through the door at any time. The Ponderosa Ranch theme park operated for 37 years. It closed in 2004. For over 3 decades, visitors to the Nevada countryside near Lake Tahoe could step into the world of a television show and find it convincingly, persistently real, built to match the fiction with enough precision that the boundary between Bonanza and the Nevada landscape behind it became pleasantly unclear. 6. Michael Landon wrote and directed, and nobody wanted to tell him. Michael Landon's ambitions extended well beyond performing the role of Little Joe Cartwright. From relatively early in the show's run, he began writing episodes and eventually directing them, accumulating creative credits across multiple seasons that reflected a developing interest in the full mechanics of television production rather than just performance. Producer David Dortort, looking back on the later years of the show's run, described the dynamic around Landon with a candor that suggested genuine friction. Nearly every line, every scene, every setup everything would halt for endless story conferences. Landon was, by the later seasons, exercising a level of influence over his episodes that went beyond what most lead actors in dramatic television attempted. This pattern of creative control was not an aberration. It was preparation. Landon went on after Bonanza to create, write, direct, and star in Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, both of which he essentially ran as sole creative authority. The specific skills he developed pushing back against Dortort on the Bonanza set were the skills he used to build a subsequent career that made him, arguably, the most consistently successful and commercially powerful television creative of the 1970s and 1980s. He was difficult on set. He was also right to be developing what he was developing. The friction Dortort experienced in those later seasons was the friction of a man learning how to be the next thing he was going to be. 5. The show was structured to be shot in almost any order. Here is a production detail that most viewers never registered, but that shaped the show in ways that are genuinely interesting. The characters' costumes almost never changed. Episode after episode across 14 seasons, Adam wore the same black outfit, Hoss wore the same blue-gray shirt, Little Joe wore the same green jacket, and Ben wore the same combination. The repetition was so consistent that it was noticeable, and it was entirely intentional. The reason was stock footage. Bonanza had accumulated a significant library of location footage, horse riding sequences, and action material over its seasons that could be cut into current episodes to reduce production costs. But stock footage only works if the characters look the same in the stock as they do in the newly filmed material. Costume continuity was the mechanism that made the stock footage library usable. At a production cost of between $100,000 and $150,000 per episode, making it among the most expensive shows on American television, the budget management tools available to the production mattered. The same outfits, worn consistently, allowed a 7-year-old riding sequence to be cut into a 14th season episode without any viewer noticing the join. The Cartwrights wore the same clothes for 14 years, not because the show was cheap, but because the show was managing the cost of being expensive. 4. Lorne Greene was the voice of doom before he was Ben Cartwright.
Here by that one. Lord Dunsford, I'm Adam Cartwright.
Adam Cartwright.
Before Lorne Greene was the wise, authoritative patriarch of the Ponderosa, before he became the father figure thousands of American teenage boys wrote fan letters to, he had earned a very different kind of reputation in broadcasting. Greene was born in Ottawa, Canada, and built his early career as a radio announcer. He became the chief broadcaster for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation during World War II, and his specific wartime contribution was the nightly news broadcast that Canadians tuned in to hear the latest reports from Europe. The reports were frequently devastating. Casualty numbers, cities bombed, battles lost, and won at terrible cost. Greene's voice, resonant, steady, carrying authority without performed emotion, became the voice his country associated with the worst news the war was producing. He was known, during the Battle of Britain and the years that followed, as the voice of doom. His face was unknown, his voice was everywhere, and that voice carried a specific weight, the weight of someone telling you the truth about how bad things were, without flinching, without false reassurance, with the steady composure of someone who believed that accurate information was worth more than comfortable fiction. He later invented a stopwatch that ran backwards to help him time his speaking better. The man who became the most trusted television father in America spent the early years of his career as the voice his country associated with wartime catastrophe. Both roles required the same thing, the ability to make people believe that whoever was speaking was telling them the truth, and that the truth was worth listening to. 3. The show ended because of a death, not a cancellation.
Honoured with you. I'd be interested in seeing some of your guns. I hope you brought them along.
By 1972, Bonanza was still producing new episodes. The ratings had declined from the show's dominant position in the mid-1960s, but the show was not in immediate crisis. The production machinery was running. The cast, now without Pernell Roberts, who had left in 1965, but still anchored by Green, Blocker, and Landon, was intact. Then Dan Blocker died on May 13, 1972. He was 43 years old. The cause was a pulmonary embolism following gallbladder surgery. He had been expected to recover. He didn't. The news arrived without warning, mid-production, mid-season, at a moment when nobody had been preparing for it. The production went on hiatus. Lorne Greene, speaking publicly about the loss, said what was on everyone's minds. He didn't see how the show could continue. Hoss Cartwright was not a supporting character who could be replaced by a new actor with a plausible explanation. He was one of the three sons. He was the emotional center of the show's warmth. He was Dan Blocker. NBC produced a final season without Blocker. A new young character named Griff King, played by Tim Matheson, who had years earlier voiced Johnny Quest, was added as a Ponderosa hand, attempting to fill some of the companionable space Hoss had occupied. The effort was decent and insufficient simultaneously. The season aired. The show ended in January 1973. There was no final episode designed as a goodbye. No wrap-up. Bonanza had always continued, until it couldn't. And what it couldn't continue past was the loss of one specific irreplaceable person. 2. The show was explicitly designed to be moral television.
Stay to supper?
No thanks. I better show my face around the Ponderosa.
Creator David Dortort was explicit and consistent across decades of interviews about what Bonanza was supposed to be doing in the living rooms of American families every week. He wanted to present moral dilemmas, real ones, situations that didn't resolve cleanly, that required thought rather than simply shooting the right person. The show's commitment to dialogue over gunfights, to the Cartwrights using reason and relationship as the primary tools for resolving conflict, with violence as the genuine last resort rather than the exciting first option, was a deliberate structural choice that separated Bonanza from most of the westerns surrounding it in prime time. This moral architecture produced something visible in the audience response. The show attracted demographic groups that traditional westerns didn't reach. Women watched it in large numbers, which was unusual for the genre. Older viewers watched it. The show's blend of action and ethical deliberation widened its audience beyond the young male demographic that most network executives expected westerns to serve. It also produced the fan letters, not just the teenage boys writing to Lorne Greene, the specific letters that described what the show had done for families who watched it together, who had argued about the dilemmas the Cartwrights faced, who had used an episode as the starting point for a conversation that hadn't happened before. Television as a vehicle for moral education was not a new idea in 1959. Dortort executed it with unusual consistency over 14 years. 1. What Bonanza was actually about. And here is the thing that 14 seasons of Nevada ranching was always pointing toward, and that most cultural discussions of the show haven't fully articulated. Bonanza was a show about what it costs to maintain something worth maintaining. The Ponderosa was not simply a property. It was a specific idea about what a family could be, what authority looked like when it was rooted in genuine moral commitment rather than physical dominance, what loyalty meant when it was chosen rather than enforced, what a father was owed when he had genuinely earned it. Ben Cartwright's 1,000-square-mile ranch was, in David Dortort's Arthurian framework, the kingdom. And like every kingdom, it required constant, active maintenance against forces that would reduce it. Those forces changed every season. In the early years, they were outlaws and claim jumpers and the specific violence of a frontier that hadn't been civilized yet. In the later years, they were development interests, legal disputes, the encroachment of a more modern world that didn't share the Ponderosa's values. What never changed was the Cartwright response. Show up, reason first, fight if necessary, stay. 14 seasons. 3 sons, then 2, then 1. A father who held the center. An audience of hundreds of millions worldwide who recognized in the Ponderosa something they wanted to believe was possible. A place where the right people made the right decisions and paid the real cost of maintaining something worth maintaining. That's not nostalgia. That's aspiration. And it's the reason the show has never fully gone away. 15 facts, 1 ranch, and the question worth debating. Is Bonanza still the defining version of the family Western? Or has something made since 1973 genuinely surpassed it? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more of this. We'll be back next week.